Hey guys, okay, let's continue our reading. So we're on chapter, I think it's 4. You know what I need to do? I need to write down the chapter numbers in here. So let's do, there we go. Okay, chapter 4, animal pills. At this point, George suddenly had an extra good idea. Although the medicine cupboard in the house was forbidden ground, what about the medicines his father kept on the shelf in the shed next to the hen house? The animal medicines, what about those? Nobody had ever told him that he shouldn't touch them. He's finding a loophole. Let's face it, George said to himself, hairspray and shaving cream and shoe polish are all very well, and they will no doubt cause some splendid explosions inside the old geezer. But what the magic mixture now needs is a touch of the real stuff. Real pills and real tonics to give it punch and muscle. George picked up the heavy 3/4 full saucepan and carried it out the back door. He crossed the farmyard and headed straight for the shed alongside the hen house. He knew his father wouldn't be there. He was out making hay in one of the meadows. George entered the dusty old shed and put the saucepan up on the bench. Then he looked up at the medicine shelf. There were 5 big bottles there. 2 were full of pills. 2 were full of runny stuff. 1 was full of powder. I'll use them all, George said. Grandma needs them. Boy, does she need them. The first bottle he took down contained an orange-colored powder. The label said, for chickens with foul pest, hen gripe, sore beaks, gammy legs, cockroachitis, egg trouble, broodiness, or loss of feathers. Mix 1 spoonful only with each bucket of feed. And so here he is, checking out all the goods to pick from. Well, George said out loud to himself as he tipped in the whole bottleful, the old bird won't be losing any feathers after she's had a dose of this. The next bottle he took down had about 500 gigantic purple pills in it. For horses with horse throats, it said on the label. The horse-throated horse should suck 1 pill twice a day. Grandma may not have a hoarse throat, George said, but she's certainly got a sharp tongue. Maybe they'll cure that instead. Into the saucepan went the 500 gigantic purple pills. Then there was a bottle of thick yellowish liquid for cows, bulls, and bullocks, the label said. Will cure cowpox, cow mange, crumpled horns, bad breath in bulls, earache, toothache, headache, hoofache, tail-ache, and sore udders. Well, that grumpy old cow in the living room has every one of those rotten illnesses, George said. She'll need it all. With a slop and a gurgle, the yellow liquid splashed into the now nearly full saucepan. The next bottle contained a brilliant red liquid. Sheep dip, it said on the label, for sheep with sheep rot and for getting rid of ticks and fleas. Mix 1 spoonful in 1 gallon of water and slosh it over the sheep. Caution, do not make the mixture any stronger or the wool will fall out and the animal will be naked. By gum, said George, how I'd love to walk in and slosh it all over old grandma and watch the teas and ticks and fleas. You see what I did there? I combined it. Ticks and fleas made teas. That's not right. Ticks and fleas go jumping off of her. But I can't. I mustn't. She'll have to drink it instead. He poured the bright red medicine into the saucepan. The last bottle on the shelf was full of pale green pills. Pig pills, the label announced. For pigs with pork prickles, tender trotters, bristle blight, and swine sickness. Give 1 pill per day. In severe cases, 2 pills may be given, but more than that will make the pig rock and roll. What kind of label is this? Just the stuff, said George, for that miserable old pig back there in the house. She'll need a very big dose. He tipped all the green pills, hundreds and hundreds of them, into the saucepan. And there he is, carrying it away. There was an old stick lying on the bench that had been used for stirring paint. George picked it up and started to stir his marvelous concoction. The mixture was as thick as cream, and he stirred, and many wonderful colors rose up from the depths and blended together. Pinks and blues, greens, yellows, browns. George went on stirring until it was all well mixed. But even so, there were still hundreds of pills lying on the bottom that hadn't melted yet. And of course, there was his mother's splendid powder puff. Remember, we talked about the powder puff yesterday, right? The big thing, and then you use it to put the powder on. So, I mean, that's not going to melt. That's probably plastic and hair, fur, fake fur, I don't even know. Floating on the surface, right? That did not dissolve. That did not become part of the mixture. I shall have to boil it all up, George said. One good quick boil on the stove is all it needs. And with that, he staggered back towards the house with the enormous, heavy saucepan. Now, I have to say, George is, I don't remember how old. Some of you will remember. Noah, you'll remember. How old was George? Was he 8? Anyways, really, he's using some great science. Okay, he's talking about dissolving things. When something is dissolved in, let's say I'm making Kool-Aid and I'm adding sugar, okay, I want to dissolve the sugar into the liquid. Okay, when the liquid is fully saturated, then no more sugar will dissolve. Okay, but if there's sugar left on the bottom of something that I'm making and I want it to dissolve, what I need to do then is I need to raise the temperature of the rest. Okay, so if I have a cold cup of tea and I add in sugar, only so much will dissolve. If I heat up the water, more of that sugar will dissolve. Okay, so he's got a great idea because some of those pills and stuff haven't dissolved in, and so he's going to raise the temperature and more will dissolve then. That's science. And he, I think, is ahead of his time with that. So way to go, George. So he staggered back towards the house with the enormous, heavy saucepan. On the way, he passed the garage. So, of course, why not, right? He went in to see if he could find any other interesting things. He added the following from the garage. Like, I mean, really, he's adding everything. Why stop now? Go into the garage. What else can you grab? He added a pint of engine oil to keep Grandma's engine running smoothly, obviously. Some antifreeze to keep her radiator from freezing up in winter. And a handful of grease to grease her creaking joints. Then, back to the kitchen. Next chapter is called The Cook-Up. I'm just going to keep on going. Here we go. Oh, let me write down number 5. Chapter 5, The Cook-Up. In the kitchen, George put the saucepan on the stove and turned up the gas flame underneath it as high as it would go. Okay, max heat. He's not messing around. George! In the awful voice from the next room. It's time for my medicine! No, not yet, Grandma, George called back. There's still 20 minutes before 11 o'clock. What mischief are you up to in there now? Granny screeched. I hear noises. George thought it would be best if he didn't answer that question. I admire, he's not wanting to lie. Okay, that's good at least. He found a long wooden spoon in a kitchen drawer, and he began stirring hard. The stuff in the pot got hotter and hotter. Soon the marvelous mixture began to froth and foam. A rich blue smoke, the color of peacocks, rose from the surface of the liquid, and a fiery, fearsome smell filled the kitchen. It made George choke and splutter. It was a smell unlike anything he had smelled before. It was a brutal and bewitching smell, spicy and staggering, fierce and frenzied, full of magic. Whenever he got a whiff of it up his nose, it felt like firecrackers were going off in his skull and electric prickles ran along the back of his legs. It was wonderful to stand there, stirring this amazing mixture and to watch it smoking blue and bubbling and frothing and foaming as though it were alive. At one point, he could have sworn he saw bright sparks flashing in the swirling foam. Okay, so George the cook, here we go. He is stirring, we've got the smoke, and wow, he is just feeling, I don't know what he's feeling. Sparky. Mm. Oh, that picture goes with the next page. Because suddenly, George found himself dancing around the steaming pot, chanting strange words that came into his head out of nowhere. Fiery broth and fiery brew, foamy froth and riches blue, fume and spume and spoon drift spray, fizzle swizzle shout array. Watch it sloshing, swashing, splashing, hear it hissing, squishing, spissing. Grandma better start to pray. Oh dear, poor Grandma. That's the end of that chapter. Next one is called Brown Paint. Okay? Numero 6. C'est le brown paint. George turned off the heat under the saucepan. He must leave plenty of time for it to cool down, right? Obviously, you can't give Grandma hot medicine. She's going to know something's up. Good thinking, George. When all the steam and froth had gone away, he peered into the giant pan to see what color the great medicine now was. It was a deep and brilliant blue. It needs more brown in it, George said. It simply must be brown or she'll get to be suspicious. George ran outside and dashed into his father's tool shed, where all the paints were kept. Of course, you need to be a different color. Add some paint. There was a row of cans on the shelf, all colors, black, green, red, pink, white, and brown. He reached for the can of brown. The label said simply, dark brown gloss paint, 1 quart. He took a screwdriver and he prized, we would probably say pried, off the lid. The can was 3/4 full. He rushed it back to the kitchen and he poured the whole thing into the saucepan. The saucepan was now full to the brim. Very gently, George stirred the paint into the mixture with a long wooden spoon. Aha! It was all turning brown! A lovely, rich, creamy brown! Where's that medicine of mine, boy? Came the voice from the living room. You're forgetting me! You're doing it on purpose! I shall tell you, mother! I'm not forgetting you, Grandma, George called back. I'm thinking of you all the time. But there are still 10 minutes left to go. You're a nasty little maggot, the voice screeched back. You're a lazy and disobedient little worm and you're growing too fast. And George fetched the bottle of Grandma's real medicine from the sideboard. He took out the cork and he tipped it all down the sink. He then filled the bottle with his own magic mixture by dipping a small jug into the saucepan and using it as a pourer. He replaced the cork. Had it cooled down enough yet? There he is, refilling it. Not quite. He held the bottle under the cold tap, so he's running cold water on it, for a couple of minutes. The label came off in the wet, but that didn't matter. He dried the bottle with a dishcloth. All was now ready. This was it. The great moment had arrived. Medicine time, Grandma, he called out. I should hope so, too, came the grumpy reply. The silver tablespoon in which the medicine was always given lay ready on the kitchen sideboard. George picked it up. Holding the spoon in one hand and the bottle in the other, he advanced into the living room. And of course, that's where the chapter ends. I would love to say, and that's it for today. And then in class, everyone, no! Right? Oh man, I miss those moments. But I'm going to keep going because I feel like this hasn't been long enough. And I just have a moment of peace in the house without people banging on the door. So I'm just going to keep going. Grandma gets the medicine. Okay, numero 7. Okay. Chapter 7. Grandma gets the medicine. Grandma sat hunched in her chair by the window. Her little wicked eyes followed George closely as he crossed the room towards her. You're late, she snapped. I don't think I am, Grandma. Don't interrupt me in the middle of a sentence, she shouted. You finished your sentence, Grandma. There you go again, she cried. Always interrupting and arguing. You really are a tiresome little boy. What's the time? It's exactly 11 o'clock, Grandma. You're lying as usual. Stop talking so much and give me my medicine. Shake the bottle first and pour it into a spoon and make sure it's a whole spoonful. Are you going to gulp it all down in one go? George asked her, or will you sip it? What I do is none of your business, the old woman said. Fill the spoon. As George removed the cork and began very slowly to pour the thick brown stuff into the spoon, he couldn't help thinking back upon all the mad and marvelous things that had gone into the making of this crazy stuff. The shaving soap, the hair remover, the dandruff cure, the automatic washing machine powder, the flea powder for dogs, the shoe polish, the black pepper, the horseradish sauce, and all the rest of them, not to mention the powerful animal pills and powders and liquids, and of course, the brown paint. Open your mouth wide, Grandma, he said. I'll pop it in. The old lady opened her small, wrinkled mouth, showing disgusting pale brown teeth. Here we go, George cried out. Swallow it down! He pushed the spoon well into her mouth and just tipped the mixture down her throat. Then he stopped and stepped back to watch the result. It was worth watching. Grandma yelled, "Owie!" and her whole body shot up whoosh into the air. It was exactly as though someone had pushed an electric wire under her chair and switched on the current. Up she went like a jack-in-the-box, and she didn't come down. She stayed there, suspended in mid-air, about 2 feet up, still in a sitting position, but rigid now, frozen, quivering, her eyes bulging, and her hair standing up on end. I can't even see it. Something wrong, Grandma? George asked politely. Come on, he knows what's wrong. Are you all right? Suspended up there in space, the old girl was beyond speaking. The shock that George's marvelous mixture had given her must have been tremendous. You would have thought that she had swallowed a red-hot poker the way she took off from that chair. So look, here she is. She's still in a sitting position. She's just like hovering in the air. That's a powerful medicine. Then, from being up, she came again with a plop, back down into her seat. Call a fire brigade! She shouted suddenly. My stomach's on fire! Oh, it's just the medicine, Grandma, George said. It's good, strong stuff. Fire! The old woman yelled. Fire in the basement! Get a bucket! Man the hoses! Do something quick! Cool it, Grandma, George said. But he got a little bit of a shock when he saw the smoke coming out of her mouth and out of her nostrils. Clouds of black smoke were coming out of her nose and were now blowing around the room. By golly, you really are on fire, George said. Of course I'm on fire, she yelled. I'll be burned to a crisp. I'll be fried to a frizzle. I'll be boiled like a beetroot. George ran into the kitchen and came back with a jug of water. Open your mouth, Grandma, he cried. He could hardly see her through all the smoke, but he managed to pour half a jugful down her throat. A sizzling sound, the kind that you get if you hold a hot frying pan underneath a cold tap, came up from deep down in Grandma's stomach. The old woman bucked and shied and snorted. She gasped and gurgled, and spouts of water came shooting out of her, and then the smoke cleared away. Ah, the fire is out, George announced proudly. You'll be all right now, Grandma. All right, she yelled. Who's all right? There's jumpy jumpers in my tummy, there's squigglers in my belly, and there's bangers in my bottom. She began bouncing up and down in the chair. Quite obviously, she was not feeling very comfortable. You'll find it's doing you a lot of good, that medicine, Grandma, George said. Good, she screamed. Doing me good? It's killing me! Then she began to bulge. She was swelling. She was puffing up all over. Somebody was pumping her up. That's how it looked. Was she going to explode? Her face was turning from purple to green. But wait, she had a puncture somewhere. George could hear the hiss of escaping air. Think about what it sounds like if you have like a bike tire, right, with a little like. She stopped swelling, and she was going down, down, down. She was slowly getting thinner again, shrinking back and back and back and back to her old shrivelly self. How How's things, Grandma? George asked. No answer. Then a funny thing happened. So there she is when she's all puffy. Grandma's body gave a sudden sharp twist and a sudden sharp jerk, and she flipped herself clear out of the chair and landed neatly on her 2 feet on the carpet. Hey, that's terrific, Grandma! George cried. You haven't stood up like that for years. Look at you. You're standing up all on your own and you're not even using a stick. She doesn't even need her cane. Grandma didn't even hear him. The frozen, pop-eyed look was back with her again now. She was miles away in another world. Marvelous medicine, George told himself. He found it fascinating to stand there, watching what it was doing to the old woman. What next? He wondered. He soon found out. Okay, here's the picture. I don't want to show that one. To me, that seems like the picture when he gave her the water. Whatever. What next, he wondered. Soon, he found out. Suddenly, she began to grow. It was quite slow at first, just a very gradual inching upwards, up, inch by inch, getting taller and taller. I'm sitting in my chair, I can't get any taller. About an inch every few seconds, and in the beginning, George didn't notice it. But when she had passed the 5'6" mark and was going on up towards being 6 feet tall, George gave a jump and shouted, "Hey, Grandma, you're growing, you're going up. Oh, whoa, hang on, Grandma, you better stop now or you'll be hitting the ceiling." Grandma didn't stop. It was a truly fantastic sight, this ancient, scrawny old woman getting taller and taller, longer and thinner, as though she were a piece of elastic being pulled up by invisible hands. When the top of her head actually touched the ceiling, George thought she was bound to stop. Right? There's something in the way. How can you keep on going? Well, she definitely looks different. Turn the page, let's find out. She didn't stop. There was a sort of scrunching noise, and bits of plaster and cement came raining down. Hadn't you better stop now, Grandma? George said. Daddy's just had this whole room repainted. There was no stopping her now. Soon her head and shoulders had completely disappeared through the ceiling, and she was still going. George dashed upstairs to his own bedroom, and there she was coming up through the floor like a mushroom. "Whoopee!" she shouted, finding her voice at last. "Hallelujah! Here I come!" That's a surprise. What do you not want in your bedroom? This. Right? No thanks. Time to redecorate. Steady on, Grandma. Okay, he's like, okay, let's just hold our horses here. With a hey, Nani, no, and up we go. She shouted, "Just watch me grow." "This is my room," George said. "Look at the mess you're making." "Terrific medicine," she cried. "Give me some more." "She's as dotty as a donut," George thought. "Come on, boy, give me some more. She'll dish it out. I'm slowing down." George was still clutching the medicine bottle in one hand, right? Like you can see, he still has all his stuff in his hand. He was clutching the bottle in one hand and the spoon in the other. Oh well, he thought, why not? He poured out a second dose and popped it into her mouth. "Owie!" she screamed, and up she went again. Her feet were still on the floor, downstairs in the living room, but her head was moving quickly towards the ceiling of the bedroom. Right, so he's the ceiling of the second floor. "I'm on my way now, boy," she called down to George. "Just watch me go." That's the attic above you, Grandma," George called out. "I would keep out of there. It's full of bugs and boggles." What's a boggle? Who knows? Crash! The old girl's head went through the ceiling as though it were butter. No problem at all. George stood in his bedroom, gazing at the shambles. There was a big hole in the floor and another in the ceiling, and sticking up like a post between the two was the middle part of Grandma. Her legs were in the room below, her head in the attic. "I'm still going," came the old screechy voice from up above. "Give me another dose, boy. Let's go through the roof." "No, Grandma, no," George called back. "You're busting up the whole house." "Who cares about the house?" she shouted. "I want some fresh air. I haven't been outside for 20 years. "By golly, she is going through the roof," George told himself. He ran downstairs. He rushed out of the back door into the yard. It would be simply awful, he thought, if she bashed up the roof as well. His father would be furious, and he, George, would get the blame. He had made the medicine. He had given her too much. "Don't come through the roof, Grandma," he prayed. "Please don't." So here, this is what his bedroom looks like now. That's very strange, to say the least. And here he is outside. "Please don't. No, not through the roof." And that's where I'm going to stop. Next chapter. Okay, what did I say? Last one was 7. Okay, so chapter 8. It's called The Brown Hen. So come back tomorrow for The Brown Hen. Here you go.